Well, there have been growing conversations around issues of talent development, challenges as far as learning in children, especially in the formative year are concerned, inclusive education and all of that. One thing that excites me is where people lay down their life to make sure that these conversations are on the front burner and they make it even to policies, and the policies are also executed. In very developed countries, you find these are the very important issues that are being discussed and, of course, challenges also resolved. Well, we are a developing continent. We're expecting that we have these conversations, very, very productive ones. So we are able to, bring about some knowledge to all of you. Have you heard about dyslexia? We've discussed this in the studio before, but there's a conference coming up, and there are also some team who are ready to speak to you about it more so we can have some better and further understanding, especially for those of you who also missed it, right? In the studio is Alex Amankwa. Mr. is Executive Director for Top Performance Institute, TPI, Neuro-Linguistic Programming Practitioner as well, who joins us for the first time. Good morning, and thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
Great. Well, second time here in the studios, Rosalind Abigail Chernate is founder of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. Grateful, thank you. It's good to have you again. Yes. Joining us via Zoom all the way from the United Kingdom is Dr. Martin Bloomfield, is founding director of Beyond Inclusion Limited, United Kingdom. If you can hear me, thank you very much for your time. We are grateful that you can join us.
It's an absolute pleasure, and good morning from Europe.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into a lot of discussion, and I can assure you that you are going to gain a lot of knowledge, and we will surely delve into issues that will interest you as well. But let me start with you. What have you been doing since we saw you, had you in the studio? Tell us all about it.
It's been busy and busy, and the last time I got here, I was telling you about what the Africa Dyslexia is doing, and one of the things that we strive to do well is advocacy towards policy and practice. And through that, this year we've set a very ambitious goals where we partnered with UNESCO to train over 700 teachers for the past 3 months. So it was really busy for us, taking teachers through from the basics of what learning disabilities are to how they can support their learners in their classroom.
Right.
And building on that, we have been organizing what is called the Dyslexia Education Stakeholders Forum for the past 3 years. But this year, we decided that we are going to go bigger and do the Africa Dyslexia Conference, which I'm excited about. This is bringing everybody who education matters to them. And not just education, but also workplaces, because we believe that our students eventually graduate and go into workplaces to work there. And how can the workplaces be more inclusive for them? So the Africa Dyslexia Conference is bringing everybody together, discussing issues from policies to strategies to assistive technologies to how to make an individualized learning plan for a child with dyslexic or related learning difficulties. And so it's packed. We have renowned speakers here in Ghana, and we have 15 speakers coming from both US, UK, and Dubai, and bringing everybody together on the 13th and 14th of August to dialogue over the period of 2 days, and then also go into masterclass workshops. If you are an educator or a school owner or an organization, you're not at this conference, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will. Of course, I have that background, so I have to come by. Before I come to Mr. Mankwa, before our technology gets to fail us, which it will not, amen, Dr. Martin Bloomfield is via Zoom. There's a way as I mentioned, the developed countries approach issues that have to do with learning disabilities or challenges. It becomes progressive in nature where there's not only resources, there's the attention, the needed attention given to it. Whereas elsewhere, you find them either, trying to do that. How is it that in the very developed countries we are able to see this? Is it just a consciousness to be able to deal with it, or there's something extra that we need to also add to our efforts?
Well, it's a great question. Thanks for this. There's a two-pronged approach. There's what you might call a practical approach and what you might call a social approach. So on the social level, the first thing is that we allow people to be themselves and to talk about this very much. So the levels of stigma have been reduced over the past few years, so that I talk about my dyslexia very openly. Whereas when I was a child, if I'd been seen as dyslexic, I would have been shunned and I would have been set to one side. There's still a long way to go, by the way. There's still a long, long way to go. But the other side is the practical side. The research is really quite clear about this, that we know that when we assess people for learning differences, we are able to teach them better. When we're able to teach them better, they get better results, but they also end up with better mental health outcomes. And they'll get better jobs and they'll contribute to the economy more. And actually, we find that once we start teaching inclusively in schools, it's cheaper for the schools than to teach in the traditional ways and lose certain kids. And so what we've found is that there's this two-pronged approach, and they go together very well. So on the one hand, there's the social approach, the reduction of stigma, and on the other hand, there's the practical level.
I see. Very, 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 very important. I'll get back to you on some issues, but let's start over with it. I mean, let's give a brief background, especially to people who are just watching for the first time and hearing the word dyslexia for the first time. Let's clarify that, and if there are some other related learning disabilities, we can throw them in. Well, let's focus on dyslexia. Let me start off with you, Mr. Monkwa.
Right. Thank you very much. So we're looking at dyslexia as a difficulty with reading.
Okay.
But there has been a definition given to it, and the kinds of words that have been chosen in the definition would make it too complex. Okay. We're talking about it as a neurological disorder with deficits in certain parts of the brain region and all that. But to simplify it, we're saying dyslexia is a learning disability that is characterized with difficulties with reading, and writing, and spelling, and the likes, as we break it down to form the other forms of learning disabilities. So dyslexia, particularly, when you look at the word dyslexia, dys is difficulty, lexia, words. So difficulty with words. So when you look at it in conformity with other forms of learning disabilities, you might find a child who has dyslexia, who's also struggling with spelling, and with writing, when we talk about dysorthographia, spelling, dysgraphia, that is writing, and some also with dyslexia may be struggling with math, so certain challenges as dyscalculia. Yeah, some also may be struggling with gross and fine motor skills that we call dyspraxia. So it's a chain of forms of learning disabilities. Dyslexia has been on the forefront because in the early 18th century, that is where the discovery came about. And whilst they were working on it, they early on called it word blindness.
Okay.
They are blind to words. Then came up a time where they discovered through neuroscience that it's a brain organization difference and not a particular disorder that does not allow children to learn appropriately. Instead, it's a brain organization difference. Their brains are wired differently from the conventional and regular kind of a brain that we used to learn, like our approach. So they are set apart with so much intelligence, yet they don't learn in the conventional way. So I love the saying. I said, if they can't learn the way you teach them the way they learn.
Okay.
Meaning we need to understand. We rather are the challenge. They are not.
Okay.
We don't understand them. And that is why when we talk about the geniuses, it means that they have their real areas of strength and abilities, yet that is not our focus. So it's all about a telescope that you tune it to one side.
I see.
The miniature of the sea, that's what you see. But when you turn it to the other side, the other perspective, you see the broad perspective of several strengths that they have.
I see. Of course, from the conversation we had before, one of the things I said was because I have a background in teaching. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So, and you just learned these things to pass exams, okay, as a teacher or a teacher trainee. All right. Now, in practicing these, once you get into the class, you have a lot of people who cannot read words, cannot read. And it's about sometimes the environment they're coming from. They started very late. Sometimes it has to do with some of these challenges that they have with their brains and all of that. Question is, are there, of course, I'm sure the conference will address this, but practically, educators are taught, facilitators are taught to be able to segment these children to say that, no, probably this person's started very late, and so these are the approaches, because I'm not sure we have that for teachers in this country. It's about wholesale, get in there, teach them. There's always a way you examine them all together, and we're good to go. Tell me about it. What's the approach like?
Well, just as you've described, and Alex and Martin can also add to it when I'm done, that is what is happening in Ghana here and beyond Ghana, within the continent of Africa. But we know the problem, so why don't we look at the solution side? And so the solution side is what we are saying, that let's step back and see where is the foundational issue coming from. So who are the teachers training our teachers before they come out?
Okay.
What is the curriculum they are doing? What is the program? How in-depth and practical it is? That will make a teacher graduate and step into a classroom and be bold enough to say that, I know, first of all, I know about all the learning differences or learning disabilities, and I can screen confidently to determine the level of all my learners. And I'm able to group my learners into their abilities of how they learn, and I'm able to teach them. And with a child who have a learning challenge, I'm able to strategically prepare lesson plans for them and teach them in the rightful way.
Okay.
It is possible, it can be done, and we can start it right from their pre-service training. But then before you do that pre-service training, we need to get those lecturers, those teachers who they are teaching, to be trained. And once they train, they can then train our in-service, pre-service teachers. Then also we can address the issue with those already who are in the teaching field and address. And this will be based on different forms when it comes to dyslexia and related learning challenge insert. There are different programs from the science of reading, multi-sensory approach of reading, which the UD, or Universal Design of Learning, addresses some of these things. So we need to be intentional about it. I see recently a lot of organizations are talking about foundational learning, and they think foundational learning is going to address everybody's case. But I tell you, if you don't intentionally, within the foundational learning, put something that will address the need of the child who is potentially dyslexic or have any form of learning challenge, I'm sorry, you're going to fail. But that is what our policymakers and those who have the funding and they are funding some of these programs don't get it yet. That there are 1 in 5, which is like 20% of a population, we are not addressing their need. So how can we all work together? So we're hoping that with such conferences and gatherings and on your platforms like this, we'll raise that urgent call for action for us to look at things holistically and do it well, and not just a check box of activities or programs that we think can solve the situation. Maybe Alex have...
Yeah, but let me go to Doc before I return to Alex now. Doc, if you can hear me, I mean, you have described dyslexia not as a measure of intelligence. You say is another way of learning. Yeah. What's the approach to places that are extremely established. I mean, these issues are established, where it's taking a long time, because clearly, if you cannot read in a classroom, we are told, or you are told, you are not intelligent. So you are set aside. In some cases, you are even grouped. And so there are streams, A, B, C. I don't know if you know that here in Ghana. A, B, C, A, very brilliant. B, in between. As for C, these people cannot read, they cannot write. So we can deal with them. Such are the approaches that we use. For places that have these established, ways of, approaching these, what do you use in, changing or causing a paradigm shift?
Well, it's a great question. I teach teachers and I deliver teacher training around the world. And one thing that I can tell you is that there is no nation that is ahead of anybody else. And in fact, this is an opportunity, because in Ghana and in the continent of Africa as a whole, you have the opportunity to avoid the mistakes that we've been making. Still, in teacher training, dyslexia and other neurodifferences are looked upon very quickly, very briefly, as problems to be avoided almost, and the dyslexic kids are broken. And what they do generally is they will give these dyslexic children to a specialist, to what we might call in Britain a SENCO, a special educational needs coordinator. And they'll try to integrate them into the classes, but they'll fall behind because the teachers aren't taught how to teach them properly. And what they do is at the end of the year, they'll give them an extra half an hour or an extra 20% in their exams, an extra 20% of time in exams. But this doesn't help anybody, of course, because if you haven't been learning during the year, then an extra half hour in your exams at the end of the year isn't going to help you. It's just going to make you more upset. What we need to do is we need to teach kids how to read. Now, this is very easy. Once we understand how, we know that structured phonics can help children to learn. We also know that something called morphological awareness can help kids to learn. Now, so as not to get too jargony about this, essentially what Alex did earlier on is he took the word dyslexia and he broke it down into its parts. So he talked about dys and then lexia. This is morphological awareness. Imagine that words are like Lego, and most words can be broken down into different parts. It turns out that dyslexics learn to read and to comprehend and to spell far better when they're taught morphologically. So we need to teach teachers how to do that. Then we need to understand the problems that dyslexics have. So for instance, one of the big problems is called working memory. Now, working memory is the ability to apply short-term memory. So for instance, if you're in a school and you're asked to copy something from the board, you're not learning anything. This is putting all the pressure on this working memory, trying to remember what's on the board and then to put it down on the piece of paper, then to look back on the board and remember where you were. This doesn't help dyslexics. So traditional methods like copying, traditional methods like remembering, which puts a lot of pressure on working memory, don't help dyslexics. But things that do help dyslexics are understanding phonology, that is the sounds of the letters, and understanding the way that words are built through morphological awareness. As Alex said, dyslexia. And that really helps dyslexics. So the quick answer to your question is we're not as far advanced as we might like to believe we are. But there's an opportunity that in Ghana you can grasp right now.
We can, of course, get to that point right now, and there's an opportunity, and that's why they are here. I want us to just go ahead to pinpoint some mislabeling, some activities that bring about stigma to some of these. I may try, but I want you to be practical enough. What this would do is that it will connect to somebody who probably still does not understand what we're saying. And so tell me about some of the mislabeling, the stigma that we discussed it with the other day, but let's go. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Rosalind has so much hold of mislabeling because she has experienced it before, but I will give the background to that. Right. Traditionally and conventionally, our education has concentrated on only one level of literacy, and that is academic literacy. Yeah. So finally, our education is not true education. It's not holistic education.
Yeah.
It's more of schooling. So like Doctor said, copying from the board and trying to recall and all that, yes. But then if we target the 3 strands of literacy, we look at emotional literacy, look at social literacy. Then when the child is not being able to read or being able to write, in that spectrum, we would not target academic literacy alone as learning or education. The new curriculum is trying in a way to pave that kind of way for children with learning disabilities to be part. But looking at the 4 R's in the new curriculum, we're looking at arithmetic, we're looking at reading, we're looking at writing, we're looking at creativity, and so they take the R, and the R4. We'll still go back to the first 3, reading, writing, arithmetic, and it still comes back to academic. But let's look at creativity. And so the child is that creative. Before you be able to tap that creativity off from the child, you need to apply one of the approaches we call that SBA, strength-based approach. That is more for recovery and empowerment, because every child struggling with dyslexia in any other form of learning disability has had a diminishing self-image. So when you begin to even pour in anything, you are pouring water on stones. So with the strength-based approach, you look at recovery and empowerment, and then we come to what we call bibliotherapy, where that one has to take up the interest and abilities of the child. Without these, you may teach the child in, say, primary 1, and is not doing well in mathematics, and then the reading component and the writing component. The label should come. Either you're lazy, you're stupid, you're not intelligent, you have to be added to the deficient class, like you said, A, B, C.
Yeah.
Yes. And birds of the same feather, they flock together. So if you're added to the C group, you fly along with them, meaning I am incapable. So incapacitated in that way, how does the child go through?
I see.
Now, we cut off the social intelligence, we cut off the emotional scale and disposition. That child
It's gone.
is gone.
Tell me about it. I mean, we've had this discussion. Let's remind our friends and families who are watching from all over the world what they have probably also gone through and they don't know. Tell me.
So it is hard, like as a child, for me, my childhood, sometimes I don't even want to remember.
Yeah.
I was in the C class, by the way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I wasn't the only one there. There were a lot of us.
Yeah.
And the sad part of it, which I always make an example, is one of my mates, I would say would be one of the sports person who will be competing at Olympics by now for Ghana. If she had pushed through, or if somebody has held their hand and said that we see the potential in you. Every form of sports in school, this girl is in and she's the best. But guess where she is at this moment? She's in a village somewhere with 6 children.
Wow.
Potential has been lost. We celebrate leaders like Richard Branson, Whoopi Goldberg, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Archbishop Duncan Williams, who he could have lost in the track as well. We celebrate all these people, but a lot of our Ghanaians, a lot of Africans are being lost. Those geniuses are being lost, yet we have them here. And I could have been lost. I told you the last time I was here that at the age between 13 and 14, I ran away from home for 2 weeks, took my aunt's money, and from home to Accra, stayed somewhere unknown for that period. So ask yourself, what would have happened to little Rosalind if I hadn't gone back home? I could have been murdered by now, got myself pregnant, got into drugs, so many things, because society was telling me I wasn't good because I was not producing well academically. But look at me today. But many are left behind. I am just a minute percent of those that are able to make it. And for us, we want to call on all parents.
That's right.
Because it also starts right from the home where the comparisons is so much and it's so humiliating. Imagine as a firstborn being compared to my siblings. Why are you not doing well? Mentally, what do you think is happening to the child? It's damaging them self-confidence-wise. And then when it comes to the school, because the parents' focus is so much on the score on the paper, they now come to the school and partner with the school and say that my child is not doing it. And then the school will say, yes, your child is not learning. They're a slow learner. And then you buy into that and you write off this child. But with that child, if you have studied and you have listened, you will know that my child loved electronics. My child loved computer. My child loves sports. My child loved music. My child loved cooking. How can we help harness on that to prepare this child for the future whilst we are addressing the learning challenge? Because now we are not saying that a child with dyslexia cannot learn. You've heard it from both Alex and Dr. Bloomfield that they can learn. What is important is early identification and early intervention, whilst also preparing them on their self-confidence and their strengths, identification and their abilities. Then you have your geniuses in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Absolutely.
Let me quickly chip in this.
Yes.
Yesterday, when we sent the flyers out, I sent it to a few of my colleagues, and one of the teachers who's been part of my training sent me this message. He said, please, there is this little boy with so much technical talent and unable to cope with the classroom, and so he has stopped schooling. This is the 9th school he has stopped. Any advice? I was finding out where he said the teacher and the class doesn't like him because he doesn't get money to go for Saturday class and he's being harassed and all that in that order. So a boy of 10 years has left school and has changed 9 schools as at this moment.
Well, we need to change the narrative. This issue of holiday classes, Saturday classes, I think a lot of us have gone through it, haven't we? And once you don't attend and you appear in the class, you are an alien to the system, and so you will be secluded. Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, let's talk about how to change the narrative. I think it's time to begin to speak to that.